So right now I'd love to chat with you about helping your child learn, but not just learning with their eyes. In a lot of Western countries, it's really common to expect kids to learn with their eyes. They learn by seeing and then, they've suddenly learned how to do that. Well, that's not necessarily true for someone who has some form of dyslexia. It's not necessarily true for them because often what they're seeing with their eyes is not really working. So we've got to use whatever other tools we've got. And one of the other tools that your kids have is that they have hands. So they can learn with their hands. Anything that's word cards, they're learning by seeing those letters, but they're also learning by moving their hands. That's healthy. Things like writing letters in the sand or writing words in chalk, that's fantastic. Writing words on a whiteboard is really good as well because it slows them down and they're having to use basically their whole arm because they're writing in larger font when they're writing on a whiteboard. Basically, try and get your child working with their hands, not just with their eyes, because that's going to help them to learn. Another thing is helping your child learn with their ears. Now, some kids, they just struggle to take information in through their eyes. It's like they see it, but, it just doesn't stick, particularly for kids with, say, phonological dyslexia or for kids who've, say, got visual stress, scotopic sensitivity. And for them, the words are sort of moving on the page a bit, until you can sort that out by changing the colour of the page or whatever. So for these kids, it is important that, you look at other ways of getting that information in. So you've got, using their hands and you've got using their ears. Now, anytime your child is learning with, say, music, say if your child's reading a song that they've heard before, you've got the music playing, your child is reading the lyrics, that's using their ears to help them learn. Also making sort of rhymes and patterns with words can be really effective. Any sort of rhyming thing you can do, or any sort of like sat, hat, cat, mat, fat, that sort of stuff's just so good because they're seeing the words and they're hearing the sounds as they say them. Reading for your child and writing activities, they shouldn't be just your child sitting there quietly. It should be stuff that your child's having to say as well as read. Now, obviously this doesn't apply to your child if your child's in year 7 and reading Harry Potter, okay? But if your child's just starting to learn, do everything you can to get your child away from just learning with their eyes to also learning with their ears and also with their hands. And you've got to find what works for your child. You've got to ask your own child, what works for you, and go with that. Another way that you can get your child away from just learning with their ears is that you can get your child to sort of read or speak to a voice recorder of some sort. So most mobile phones have a way of recording voice. So you just find that app and you click on it and suddenly they're recording their voice. Now, let's imagine if your child is studying for a test, okay? So an example would be someone in, say, year 7 studying for a science test. Well, you can just get them to try and read over their notes 100 times. It may not sink in, but if your child actually reads over their notes slowly into the microphone of, say, your mobile phone, so their voice is being recorded, then they can just press play at the end of that and they can hear that information once, twice, 100 times. And that information is going to sink in. So it's a very helpful study method to be getting your child away from just seeing things with their eyes to also using their hands and using their ears. And things like reading something out, content they have to memorize, into something that records their voice. Well, when you think about it, they were doing the physical act of recording it. So they were speaking. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's sort of like, it's a kinesthetic thing. It's a hands-on sort of thing to have to speak it out. But then when they're hearing it with their ears. That's exactly what you want to do, And if your child learns well through reading stuff with their eyes, well, that's fantastic. But most of the kids who you parents are doing this course for, a lot of them, you want to get away from just things that they're seeing.